Hey everyone, welcome to Unfolded Lives, where we dig deep into the stories of people who didn't just live, they changed history. And today, we're unfolding the life of someone who's more than a queen, she's a legend. This isn't just another history video. This is a journey through ambition, love, betrayal, war, and the unshakable will of a woman who defied an empire. Cleopatra's life wasn't just dramatic, it was cinematic. Think power struggles, secret plans, forbidden love, everything you'd find in a blockbuster, but it actually happened. So, sit back, relax, and let's bring to life the rise and fall of Cleopatra, the last queen of ancient Egypt. This is her story, and we're going to tell it the way it deserves to be told. Our story begins in 69 BCE, in the vibrant city of Alexandria, Egypt, a melting pot of culture, intellect, and power. It's here, inside a palace filled with marble halls and golden ornaments, that a baby girl was born. Her name? Cleopatra. But she wasn't just any child. She belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek royal family that had ruled Egypt for generations. Her ancestor, Ptolemy I, had been one of Alexander the Great's trusted generals. When Alexander died, Ptolemy took Egypt for himself and started a dynasty that mixed Greek roots with Egyptian soil. Cleopatra, centuries later, would be the last of that line. Despite being born into royalty, Cleopatra's world wasn't as secure or elegant as the palace walls might suggest. Life in the royal court was a game of survival. Power-hungry relatives, shifting alliances, and political assassinations were all part of the family legacy. Ruling Egypt didn't come with a crown. It came with a target on your back. Her father was Ptolemy XII, and though he wore the crown, he wasn't exactly popular. He was seen as a weak ruler, heavily dependent on Roman support, and more interested in keeping his own seat than truly leading. As for Cleopatra's mother, historians still debate her identity. It might have been Cleopatra the Fee. Maybe not. What we do know is that the palace, for all its grandeur, wasn't a safe place for a child, especially not for one destined to lead. From a young age, Cleopatra understood that knowledge meant survival. While most women of her time weren't given much education, especially in politics, Cleopatra was different. She didn't just study Greek like the rest of her family. She learned Egyptian, Latin, Hebrew, even some ancient Persian. Some say she spoke 7 languages fluently. Others say more. Either way, she could command a conversation in almost any court in the known world. But it wasn't just languages. She absorbed everything: science, literature, math, philosophy, and the secrets of governance. She wasn't preparing to be a figurehead. She was preparing to rule. And yet, Cleopatra's greatest strength may have been something more subtle: charisma. Stories say she had a voice that could disarm even the most cynical men. Her intelligence? Undeniable. Her confidence? Unshakable. She wasn't the most conventionally beautiful woman of her time, but when she walked into a room, she owned it. Still, her childhood was far from peaceful. Her father's reign was shaky. Riots, revolts, and foreign pressure constantly threatened the throne. At one point, the royal family even fled Egypt, exiled to Rome under Roman protection. So Cleopatra didn't just grow up in luxury. She grew up watching her world teeter on the edge. And then came a turning point. At just 14 years old, Cleopatra's life was thrown into chaos. Her mother vanished. Some say she died of illness. Others believe she was assassinated. Not long after, her father grew seriously ill. It was clear. The end was near. And the battle for the throne was about to begin. Even as a teenager, Cleopatra knew what was coming. The Ptolemaic dynasty wasn't about orderly transitions. It was about power grabs. Her siblings, her advisors, the Roman ambassadors hovering nearby. Everyone had their own agenda. And Cleopatra? She wasn't waiting for someone to choose her. She was preparing to take what was hers. What set her apart from past Ptolemies was her devotion to Egypt itself. Unlike her ancestors, who ruled as outsiders, Cleopatra embraced Egyptian culture. She didn't just speak the language, she lived it. She styled herself as the goddess Isis, aligning her image with divine Egyptian mythology. To her people, she wasn't just a queen, she was a living symbol of their history and pride. Cleopatra's rise to power didn't happen quietly. It happened in the middle of a storm. In 51 BCE, her father, Ptolemy XII, died. In his will, he declared that Cleopatra would rule, but not alone. She would co-rule with her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII. That's right, 10. Because in ancient Egypt, it wasn't unusual for siblings, sometimes even married siblings, to rule side by side. But Cleopatra wasn't interested in sharing the throne with a child. She had the knowledge, the charisma, and the vision to lead her brother. He was still playing with toys, and more importantly, he was easy to control. That made him the perfect puppet for the powerful advisors who didn't want Cleopatra in charge. At first, Cleopatra tried diplomacy. She played the role of co-ruler. She smiled, attended council meetings, and wore— Think about that. The Queen of Egypt, once draped in gold and silk, now wandering the blistering desert heat with nothing but a plan. But here's where Cleopatra shows us what she's made of. She didn't collapse. She didn't complain. She strategized. And her big break? It came in the form of a Roman general with more power than anyone in the world at the time. Julius Caesar. Caesar had just arrived in Alexandria, sent by Rome to deal with political unrest in the region. Cleopatra knew she had to act fast. If she could win Caesar's support, she could take back her throne. But how do you get into the palace when your enemies are waiting at every door? Simple. You roll yourself up in a rug. Yes, a rug. One night, Cleopatra had her servants sneak into Caesar's private quarters carrying a rolled-up carpet as a gift. Inside that carpet, Cleopatra herself. And when the rug was unfurled, there she stood, radiant, poised, confident. She wasn't just making an entrance, she was making a statement. Caesar, already impressed by intelligence and boldness, was captivated. Cleopatra didn't beg. She reasoned. She explained her love for Egypt, her vision for the future, and the danger of letting a child king be manipulated by greedy advisors. Caesar saw what the others didn't. Cleopatra wasn't just royalty. She was ready. And just like that, an alliance was born. So Cleopatra had just pulled off one of the boldest political moves in history, literally rolling herself into Julius Caesar's life. And guess what? It worked. Caesar wasn't just impressed. He was intrigued. Here was this young, exiled queen, brilliant, magnetic, speaking to him as an equal. She didn't cower. She didn't flatter. She strategized. And Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, recognized something rare, a mind as sharp as his own. But things were about to get messy, because power never comes without a fight. With Caesar's backing, Cleopatra planned her return to the throne. Together, they launched a military campaign against her brother Ptolemy XIII and the advisors who had driven her out. What followed was brutal. A full-scale civil war erupted in Alexandria. Cleopatra didn't watch from the sidelines. She strategized, negotiated, and stood beside Caesar as Egypt burned with conflict. In the end, their combined forces crushed the opposition. Ptolemy XIII was defeated. Some say he drowned trying to escape. And Cleopatra, at just 21 years old, was once again Queen of Egypt. But now she was no longer alone. She ruled alongside a new co-regent, another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. But let's be real, everyone knew who was in charge. Cleopatra had emerged not just as a monarch, but as a political force. And her relationship with Caesar, it didn't end with the war. The two became lovers, and soon after, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Ptolemy Caesar, nicknamed Caesarion, meaning Little Caesar. To Cleopatra, this child wasn't just her son. He was the bridge between two empires. Her dream? That one day Caesarion would rule both Egypt and Rome, uniting them into a powerful superstate under one bloodline. Of course, not everyone was thrilled with this idea. When Caesar returned to Rome, Cleopatra didn't stay behind in Egypt. Nope. She packed up, gathered her son, brought her full royal entourage, and sailed into the heart of the empire. And she didn't come quietly. Imagine the scene. Cleopatra arriving in Rome in full splendor. Golden chariots, exotic animals, servants dressed in brilliant Egyptian silks. It wasn't just a visit, it was a statement. She stayed in a luxurious villa on the outskirts of the city provided by Caesar himself. And she became a sensation, attending feasts, mingling with Roman elites, even influencing Roman fashion with her Egyptian style. Some loved her, many feared her. To the Roman public, she was captivating and dangerous, a foreign queen who had Caesar's ear, who bore his child, who might be manipulating the direction of their republic. And remember, Rome wasn't an empire yet. It was still a fragile republic clinging to the idea that no single person should hold all the power. But Caesar, he didn't care about tradition. He declared himself dictator for life, a title that horrified the Senate. And with Cleopatra by his side, many feared that Rome was on the verge of becoming a monarchy, ruled by an Egyptian queen and her foreign-born son. That fear turned deadly. In 44 BCE, a group of Roman senators, Brutus, Cassius, and others, plotted Caesar's assassination. They believed they were saving the Republic from tyranny. So, on the Ides of March, they stabbed him to death, right inside the Senate. The world shifted. Cleopatra was devastated. Her lover, her political ally, the father of her child, gone in a single day. And in Rome, without Caesar's protection, Cleopatra's position became immediately dangerous. She didn't wait around to see what would happen next. She gathered Caesarion, loaded her treasures, and returned to Egypt, quietly, quickly, and with purpose. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra mourned, but she didn't crumble. She knew Rome was now in chaos. Factions were forming, new powers were rising, and she had to protect Egypt and her son from the storm that was coming. She made Caesarion her official co-ruler, declared him king of kings, and began reshaping Egypt's economy and military. Cleopatra wasn't just playing defense, she was preparing for whatever came next. And what came next was Mark Antony. Mark Antony, who controlled the eastern provinces, needed resources, troops, ships, gold. Egypt had all of it, and Cleopatra, she needed a new protector. Another Roman partner who could help her hold the line against enemies foreign and domestic. So when Antony summoned Cleopatra to meet him in Tarsus, modern-day Turkey, she didn't just show up. She made an entrance. Cleopatra sailed in on a golden barge, its sails dyed purple, oars of silver, with perfumes wafting across the water. She dressed not as a queen, but as Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Servants surrounded her, dressed as gods and nymphs. The whole thing was theatrical, mythical, unforgettable. And Mark Antony? He was hooked. Their meeting sparked one of the most iconic love stories in history. Antony was bold, battle-hardened, and charming. Cleopatra was brilliant, magnetic, and dazzlingly strategic. They were political allies, but also passionately in love. Antony followed her back to Egypt, and together they became a royal power couple. Lavish banquets, grand parades, political plans. They weren't hiding, they were ruling in full view of the world. Together they dreamed of building an empire that would rival even Rome. But back in Rome, people were not thrilled. Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, saw Cleopatra as a manipulator. To him, Antony wasn't just being seduced by love, but betraying Rome itself. And when Antony officially divorced his Roman wife, Octavian's sister, to stay with Cleopatra, the feud exploded into all-out war. Rumors flew that Cleopatra wanted to place Caesarion on the throne of Rome, that she had bewitched Antony, that the East would rise and conquer the West. The propaganda machine went into overdrive. Octavian made his move. He declared Cleopatra and Antony enemies of the state. War was coming, a final clash between East and West, between ambition and legacy, between the Republic and a new royal vision. So here we are, the final act. Cleopatra and Mark Antony, now fully aligned in love and war, stood at the center of one of the most high-stakes power struggles in ancient history. Their dream was bold, to unite Egypt and the eastern provinces into a new empire, independent of Rome, ruled by their children. But Octavian, ruthless, calculating, and backed by Rome's military machine, wasn't about to let that happen. War was inevitable. The showdown came in 31 BCE at sea, near the coast of Greece, the Battle of Actium. Cleopatra and Antony assembled their fleets, Egyptian ships, Roman legions loyal to Antony, thousands of sailors and soldiers all ready to fight for a new vision of power. But Octavian's forces were disciplined, better supplied, and had the full might of the Roman Republic behind them. The battle raged across the waves, but something unexpected happened. In the middle of the fighting, Cleopatra's ship turned and retreated. Why? Historians still argue. Some say it was a strategic withdrawal. Some say it was panic. Others believe Cleopatra knew the battle was lost and wanted to save what she could. But Antony didn't know that. From his ship, he saw Cleopatra sailing away and believed the worst, that she had betrayed him, that she was abandoning everything they'd built. His heart broke right there on the battlefield. Demoralized, disoriented, Antony's forces began to collapse. Octavian claimed victory, and with it, the future of the Roman world. Cleopatra and Antony returned to Egypt, their dreams shattered, their forces decimated. But they weren't ready to surrender. They fortified Alexandria, hoping to hold off Octavian's advance. They still had wealth, soldiers, and a loyal city behind them. But Octavian was coming. In those final days, Cleopatra and Antony lived surrounded by both grandeur and doom. Lavish banquets, tearful conversations. They tried to prepare for the worst, while hoping for a miracle that would never come. Then came the final blow. Antony received false news. Cleopatra had died. Some say it was a deliberate trap. Others say it was a tragic misunderstanding. Either way, Antony, believing the love of his life was gone, took his sword and fell on it. As he lay dying, Cleopatra's servants rushed in. She was alive. Bleeding, barely conscious, Antony was carried to Cleopatra's hidden chamber. There, in that final, quiet moment, he died in her arms. The soldier, the lover, the dreamer, gone. Cleopatra was now alone. Her kingdom surrounded, her city occupied, her love dead. Octavian, now fully in control, demanded her surrender. But Cleopatra knew what came next. She'd be paraded through Rome in chains, shown off as a defeated queen, a living trophy for Octavian's victory march. And that she could never allow. Cleopatra had ruled as a goddess, stood beside two of Rome's greatest men, and shaped history with her mind, her courage, and her fire. She wouldn't be remembered as a prisoner, so she made one final, legendary decision. She dressed in her royal robes. Elegant, defiant, she surrounded herself with her most precious treasures, symbols of her reign and her life. And according to legend, she ordered a small basket to be brought to her chamber. Inside, a poisonous snake, an asp sacred in Egyptian culture. Cleopatra held it to her skin. She died on her own terms. When Octavian entered Cleopatra's chamber, he didn't find a broken prisoner. He found a queen, serene, composed, and already immortal. Her death shook the world. It was the end of 3,000 years of Egyptian independence, the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the end of pharaohs. But it wasn't the end of Cleopatra. Her legend only grew. To some, she was a seductress who brought down Rome's greatest men. To others, she was a tragic heroine caught between empires, but If you look closer, beneath the myth, behind the propaganda, you'll see the truth. She was brilliant, she was strategic, she was fearless. Cleopatra wasn't just a queen, she was a ruler in every sense of the word. Fluent in politics, diplomacy, languages, and war, she played a game that no one else dared to play and nearly won. So why does Cleopatra's story still matter today? Because it's more than just ancient history. It's a story about agency, about a woman who refused to be passive in a world dominated by men, who refused to be defined by her beauty, or her lovers, or even her crown. Cleopatra made choices, bold ones. Some paid off, others didn't. But she never let others write her story for her. At Unfolded Lives, we don't just tell stories. We uncover the people who lived them, people who dared, people who dreamed. Cleopatra's life was full of danger, love, betrayal, and power. But most of all, it was hers. She lived boldly, she ruled fiercely, and she died with dignity. May her story remind us, whatever our empire, whatever our battlefield, we all have the power to choose our ending. So, what did you think? Let me know in the comments. Was Cleopatra a master strategist, a romantic, a tragic figure, or all of the above? If this story moved you, made you think, or helped you learn something new today, do us a favor. Like the video, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. It only takes a second, but it helps us bring more powerful stories like this to life. Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.